The Baltimore Ravens just made one of the most strategic moves of the offseason, and it could be the key to solidifying their Super Bowl aspirations. I have some important updates to share with you today, but first make sure you hit that like button, but only do so if you believe the Ravens will make it to Super Bowl 60. Dude, seriously, I totally believe. If possible, comment something like, "Go Ravens! I believe in the Super Bowl." Now, I want to start by talking about this, to clear the air once and for all. The front office, led by Eric DeCosta, was able to secure left tackle Ronnie Stanley on a 3-year, $60 million extension with $44 million guaranteed. At first glance, it may seem like just another contract negotiation, but when you dig deeper, this deal represents so much more. Why did Stanley choose to stay in Baltimore despite interest from multiple teams? How does this move position the Ravens for 2025? So what does this say about the culture being built in Baltimore? Let's break it down. Ronnie Stanley was no ordinary free agent. He was the best left tackle on the market, and teams were circling. The Kansas City Chiefs, a direct competitor in the AFC, had him at the top of their list. According to reports from Nate Taylor of The Athletic, the Chiefs were preparing to make a big push for Stanley, seeing him as the perfect piece to protect Patrick Mahomes. The New England Patriots and Washington Commanders were also in the mix, both with significantly more cap space than the Ravens. Washington and New England, boasting the number 1 and number 2 cap space rankings in the entire league, could easily have thrown a financial package at Stanley that Baltimore simply couldn't match. And yet, Stanley chose Baltimore. Let that sink in. This wasn't a case of the highest bidder winning. Stanley made it clear. His priority was winning. He even stated, "I just know how much fun playing on an offense like this is, and I'll always choose winning over money any day." That's the kind of mentality that fuels championship teams. He could have earned more elsewhere, but he believes in what the Ravens are building. That speaks volumes about the team culture under John Harbaugh and the long-term vision of DeCosta. Financially, this deal is nothing short of a masterpiece. When you consider Baltimore's tight cap situation, just $11.67 million available before this signing, the front office managed to get a premium player at a bargain price. The going rate for top left tackles is well above $20 million per year, and Stanley easily could have commanded $23 to $25 million annually on the open market. The Patriots were reportedly ready to make him the highest paid tackle in free agency, per NFL insider Albert Breer. But Baltimore got the deal done, and at a price that allows them to retain other key pieces moving forward. Let's talk about what would have happened had the Ravens lost Stanley. Their options in free agency were not great. The best remaining tackles on the market include names like Cam Robinson, Dan Moore Jr., and an aging Tyron Smith. None of them offer the same reliability and familiarity with Baltimore's system as Stanley. The alternative would have been shifting Roger Rosengarten to left tackle and filling the right tackle spot with a lesser talent like Patrick McCrary. That's not exactly a championship winning formula. The Ravens needed Stanley, and instead of overpaying, they secured him at a team-friendly price. Another critical aspect of this extension is what it means for the Ravens' draft strategy. If Baltimore had lost Stanley, they would have been forced to reach for an offensive tackle at pick number 27 in the 2025 NFL Draft. Given that most elite tackle prospects are off the board by the middle of the first round, this would have put the Ravens in a tough spot. The top names, Will Campbell, Kelvin Banks Jr., and Josh Simmons, will likely be long gone by the time Baltimore picks. Instead of being forced into a bad position, the Ravens can now focus on other key areas in the draft, such as pass rush or wide receiver depth. The biggest takeaway? This move signals that the Ravens are all in on competing in 2025. Eric DeCosta and John Harbaugh didn't view this as just another offseason. They looked at last season's shortcomings, recognized what needed to be done, and prioritized keeping a critical piece of their offensive line intact. This deal might mean that Baltimore stays relatively quiet in free agency, but it also means they retain the core of a team that was just a few plays away from reaching the Super Bowl. For the fans, this is a reason to get excited. The Ravens aren't in rebuild mode. They aren't making reckless signings just to make headlines. They're making calculated moves to win now while maintaining long-term stability. Stanley's deal isn't just about keeping a left tackle, it's about sending a message. Baltimore is a destination where players want to stay, even when the money elsewhere is better. That's the kind of culture that wins championships. So now it's your turn, Ravens flock. What's your reaction to the Ronnie Stanley extension? Did the front office make the right call? Would you have been okay with letting Stanley walk and drafting a replacement? Drop your thoughts in the comments, and let's get the conversation going. This offseason is just getting started, and the Ravens have already made one of the biggest moves yet. And here's where things get even more intriguing. What does this mean for the Ravens' offensive identity in 2025? With Stanley locked in, Baltimore ensures continuity for Lamar Jackson, who just won MVP and is playing the best football of his career. Protecting Jackson has been and always will be the priority. The offensive line was already one of the best in the NFL last season, and keeping Stanley in place means there won't be any major disruptions to that chemistry. Think about what that means for Todd Monken's offense. The Ravens are building something explosive. They're not just relying on Lamar's dual threat ability anymore. They're crafting an offensive scheme that maximizes his strengths while giving him a stable pocket. Last season, we saw what happened when Jackson had time to operate. He dissected defenses with precision. With Stanley back in the fold, the offensive line remains a major strength, and that's a game changer when you consider the competition in the AFC. This isn't just about keeping a left tackle. This is about ensuring the Ravens can go toe-to-toe with the Chiefs, Bengals, and Bills when it matters most. We saw what happened in the playoffs. The Ravens had the talent, but they fell short. The front office's approach this offseason seems clear. Keep the core intact, make calculated improvements, and trust that this team, as currently constructed, is good enough to win a Super Bowl. And let's not overlook what this means for the running game. Baltimore has always been known for its dominant ground attack, and even though their offensive philosophy has evolved, they still rely heavily on controlling the line of scrimmage. With J.K. Dobbins coming back from injury and Keaton Mitchell showing flashes of explosiveness last season, the Ravens are primed to maintain one of the most balanced offenses in the NFL. Keeping Stanley means those running lanes will remain open, and it ensures that Lamar has the protection he needs when he decides to take off. The timing of this move is also critical. The Ravens got this deal done before free agency opened, meaning they didn't have to enter a bidding war. Had Stanley hit the open market, there's no doubt the price would have skyrocketed. Instead, Baltimore secured their guy on their terms, avoiding the chaos that comes with free agency negotiations. That's the mark of a front office that understands how to operate in a salary cap league. But let's be real, this move also raises some questions. With Stanley's extension taking up a significant chunk of cap space, what does this mean for the Ravens' ability to make other moves? Does this mean they're done in free agency? Could they still target a veteran wide receiver or pass rusher? Or will they rely primarily on the draft to fill any remaining holes? One thing is clear, Baltimore is betting on continuity. They're betting that the team they built last year, one that finished with the best record in the AFC, is already good enough to get over the hump. They're betting that keeping their core intact will be the difference maker in 2025. And given how close they were last season, it's hard to argue with that approach. Now, it's time for Ravens fans to weigh in. Was this the right move? Are you excited about Stanley staying in Baltimore, or would you have preferred the team to explore other options? Do you believe this team, as currently constructed, has what it takes to win a Super Bowl? Drop your thoughts in the comments, and let's get the conversation started. This is shaping up to be a fascinating offseason, and the Ravens just made one of the biggest moves yet. The Ravens just made a power move, locking in Ronnie Stanley on a 3-year, $60 million deal. This isn't just about keeping a left tackle, it's about protecting Lamar Jackson, maintaining offensive stability, and proving that Baltimore is a destination where players want to stay. Stanley had bigger offers elsewhere, but he chose winning over money. That speaks volumes about the culture here. Now, with the offensive line secured, the Ravens are doubling down on their Super Bowl aspirations. What do you think? Was this the right move? Let's talk in the comments.